The dog is a man's best friend. We know that. But how can technology improve how we look after dogs and also the well being of their owners? In this episode, we're excited to welcome Josh Anderson, co founder and product lead at Perro, a visionary startup that's transforming the way we care for our dogs. We'll explore the many ways Perro is helping pet parents measure and track key well-being metrics for their dogs, from nutrition to exercise, and the importance of a holistic approach to dog care. We'll also look behind the scenes for a deep insight into building digital and wearable products, communities, product developments, and more. Welcome to the Mary Poppins of Startups live show. I'm Naili Makangu from Athena Leaders. As a tech consultant and startup advisor, I will answer live the burning questions that you have on your journey to Series A+. Subscribe and tune in every week for top tips to meet amazing guests, startup founders, investors, and more. More importantly, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. So, Josh, welcome to the Mary Poppins of Startup Live Show. I'm really excited to have you here, and I really want to find out more about what you're building at Perro. I guess it's a concept that I haven't seen a lot, and all of my friends that have dogs, and I've told them about you, and they're already in love with the ideas. So, can you tell us a bit more about Perro?
Yeah, of course. So essentially, we're building a platform to allow people to look after their dog's well-being as well as their own mental well-being. It's taken us on a very long journey from like initial user research and engaging with the sort of pet parent community around 2.5 years ago to the current day where we have an app on the App Store and Google Play. We've got loads of early adopters providing us feedback, and we've got one eye on our wearable launch as well. So yeah, it's been a huge journey so far, but yeah, super exciting and it's kept us on our toes as well.
Yeah, so how long ago have you started, creating or coming up with the concept of Perro?
It was actually coming out of the first COVID lockdown, so a good sort of 2.5 years ago. We realized that loads of people had bought dogs, and not necessarily all of those people knew kind of what taking care of a dog kind of meant and the responsibility that brought. So we kind of anticipated that the sort of pet space in general was going to be growing massively, both the market, the user needs, etc. So the first thing we did was go out and speak to pet owners or pet parents, whatever you want to call them. When you speak to a vet, it's a pet owner. When you speak to a millennial, it's a pet parent. So you have to be kind of, flex. But yeah, I mean, we went out and spoke to about 300 pet parents. We understood kind of why they got a dog, what was their motivations for getting one. What do they struggle with day to day? What's the best part of their day? What does the dog bring to their life and bring the joy? And also where could technology potentially help them? And really what people were telling us kind of fell into three main buckets. Firstly, people didn't know how much to exercise their dog, and they were really worried about their dog getting out enough and kind of feeling guilty for that. But people didn't recognize that over-exercising was actually a thing and the issues that can cause, respiratory, joint problems, etc. So that's kind of like the first bucket of insight that we got. The second bucket of insight was around safety and security. So before COVID, leaving your dog outside the shop when you did your supermarket shop was like, you didn't even think anything of it. Whereas now, I don't know a single pet owner that would even dream of crime on the rise in general. But also leaving the kids in charge of the dog after school and letting them take the dog out for a walk, and the safety and security concerns of the dog running off, etc. And then the final thing was around the mental well-being of the pet owner themselves. So people said that they bought the dog to help with their own mental health, the companionship and stuff, especially over the COVID period, but even beforehand. But they hadn't realized the sort of responsibility that having a dog brings. They had to return to the office after COVID. What do they do with the dog? All your weekend plans, your holidays, everything revolves around having a dog. It's like having a child in the family. Actually, most people probably spend more on the dog than they do, a child. So, they were the three things that we really went out and understood, and that was all the foundations for the product that we've developed today.
Talking about the responsibility, a friend of mine fall right into that bucket of getting a dog during COVID to help her mental health, and likely for her, after COVID, her and the partner, they have enough flexibility to make sure that there is always someone at home with the dog.
Nice.
But interestingly, what they didn't realize was the level of anxiety that dog will have when it comes to interacting with other dogs, and how you need to train as a pet owner, train yourself differently, because they've had dog before, so they know how to handle them, but they didn't realize that that particular dog, even though the breed, they understood the breed, there was a lot of challenges that they have. And now, as you said, their holidays is pretty much when is the dog sitter available, which normally gets booked a year in advance, and they book the date and then they have to figure that out. So
and it's like having a COVID baby, right? Like the baby doesn't interact as much as it would with other babies, you know, when they're in nursery and stuff, because they don't during that time. And it's the same with dogs, and you know, they're used to having 100% of their time with their dog owner, and you know, when it kind of post-COVID, people returning to sort of a new normal, you know, that does really create anxieties in the dog as well. So yeah, we're seeing a whole host of I guess problems, but we see them as like opportunities as well to help kind of solve those and create, you know, positive experiences around them. So yeah, definitely a lot to unpack.
Yeah. So when it comes to, of course, you've done the research and you kind of had the idea, but when it comes to actually starting in terms of, you know, prototyping and MVPs, at which stage of Perro are you at the moment?
Yeah, so I think the main thing I would say, and probably something that we've learned over the process, is once you've got those insights and you kind of know kind of what is your North Star, you know, what are we going after, you know, what are the problems we're trying to solve, is to get something out there as quickly as possible to help validate that. So rather than kind of taking those insights and going through like a traditional kind of requirements gathering stage, going through design and planning, and then going and building something and spending time and money on doing that, I think really it's almost that kind of fake it till you make it. Get something out there that looks and feels real, put it out there and see if it sticks, you know. I think that was the key to what we did, was to kind of go very bootstrapped, very lean, get something out there as a concept that we could test with people, and that really set us up for success. I think we've taken that through from that early stage now to the point where we've got an app on the App Store and Google Play for early adopters. We're doing a full launch in around September time this year, so loads of exciting stuff happening, but really that fundamental element of getting something out there that looks and feels real and validate it, but continue to validate that through the whole process. This last 2 years has just been constant user engagement and validation to get to where we are now.
Yeah, and when you're talking about the app and the validation, are we talking about wireframes, or are we talking about having actual features that works to some extent?
Everything. So the first thing we did was, so with my background in kind of user experience, very broad-based user experience across kind of my time in industry, time at Deloitte, really it was to kind of go and do wireframes and make the concept feel real. So, you know, all the key kind of flows and screens that we needed to at least prove the concept. I then took that out to people, kind of validated that this would, you know, meet their needs and kind of create an exciting experience, get their builds, and kind of evolve that. On the wearable side, and I know we'll touch upon this a little bit later, but, you know, just building kind of, you know, sketches, and then the next stage was to develop like 3D prints, but nothing inside them, you know, it's an empty box, but it helped make it look and feel real. And then with the app, you know, we took those wireframes through into more like interactive prototypes that people could like click through, and there was like different paths they could follow, and we're trying to understand, you know, what worked, what didn't. And then, yeah, at some point you do need to hit the button into actually developing the product, but you know, you need to develop it in a smart way. I think some people kind of start with like a small like single feature or a couple of features, test that, and then build it out. We took the view that actually we had enough customer insight that we wanted to build the product more broad but shallow. So we actually kind of on the front end built a lot of the key features that we would want in the final product, but we didn't necessarily build all the back end and all the sub features that we wanted to build under those. So what that allowed us to do is kind of put something out there on test flight and then on the sort of App Store and Google Play to get people's kind of feedback and insights on all of the feature set, but on a sort of shallow level. And that has really allowed us to go into our next phase of development that we're in now, which is sort of about 2.5, 3 months before we launch our both freemium and subscription offering around September time.
One thing I really love about your approach, and definitely want to emphasize that, is that it's not just so much about this idea of building for the sake of it, right? Having features for the sake of it. Before that, as you've mentioned, there was a thorough research with customers to understand exactly their pain points. There were times where, although they didn't have the feature to play with, they had wireframe things that they can, a clickable prototype that they can see and feel, and that's what you use rather than what other people might have done, which is to build slowly, but they would have done exactly kind of the same thing. And I think it's really important to have that differentiation, as I see a lot of startups that worry about not having enough features and they end up implementing a lot of features in a way that it's really expensive for them.
Exactly. And you've got to be aware that things change, and you've got to pivot, and you've got to change direction, because, we set out on this journey to develop a wearable product. As I said, the insights we got from the users was that people didn't know how much activity they should be giving their dog. They were worried about the safety and security concerns, and they're worried about their own mental health, right? So we were like, okay, well, let's build a wearable product that we can provide the veterinary benchmarks of how much you should be exercising your dog. You track against those because your dog's got a physical device on their collar. You know where they are at any given time because it's got GPS capability. And ultimately, we need to provide a front end application for them to kind of consume all of that data. So let's use that as a way to give them, engagement exercises with their dog and that sort of peace of mind, hitting that kind of third pain point. So we started off with a wearable product, and we're now launching an app only product in September time this year. So we've pivoted from that app essentially just being a way to consume the data from the wearable to being a product in its own right. And we've had to get comfortable with that change. And that's all been based off user insights. And by users, I mean end users. So like millennial first-time pet parents that are going to be our primary customers, but also B2B partnerships as well, because ultimately the pet ecosystem is super exciting and we want to be part of it. And both our end users in terms of pet parents and the B2B kind of partnerships that we've been spinning up, they turned around and said to us, you guys have gotten a fully working app here. Like, we love it. Like, why don't you launch this as a product in its own right? And then the wearable comes in at a later date to kind of enhance that and automate it. So yeah, to your point, if we'd like fully set on this just being a front end for the wearable and built the whole thing out, we'd be in a position now where we wouldn't have been able to make that pivot. But because we kind of, taking it slowly, built things like lean, bootstrapped, and only spent money and time on the development when we were really sure of where we were heading, we're able to make that pivot at the right time. And ultimately, it's allowed us to get to market quicker. So yeah, definitely worthwhile considering that approach.
Yeah, and again, especially the fact that the wearable is still to come, and that again, when it comes to building physical products, there are another set of challenges that come with that, and also the length of development is very different than the one of digital products. So it's kind of nice to see the approach that you've taken, so that you can definitely provide something of value. And again, as you said, now is a standalone. It takes it to yet another level in terms of bringing revenue in the company as you are still working on other areas.
Exactly. You've always got to think, I guess, with a startup, especially, like, what is your next goal? For us, it was to become revenue generating, to build a community. And, the best way for us to do that was to launch the app and build that kind of platform, build the community on the platform, put a subscription offering out there, learn kind of, how that flies, and if we need to adjust that and adapt. But yeah, the wearable side of things is a completely different ball game. It's a lot harder to be agile. It's a lot harder to to kind of pivot, because you've got massive overheads and massive investment required to get something off the ground. Yes, you can do the initial concept development, which we did, and we went and built prototypes, and actually we've got 7 wearables like out in the field now being tested.
Wow. Yes.
We've done a lot of work behind it, but even the algorithms that turn all these squiggly lines from the accelerometer data and everything else into actual actionable insight that we can tell people what their dog's doing and give them guidance and reassurance. So we have done all that, but to actually get that product to market is significant outlay of capital, time, investment. And, I think the best way to almost validate that is through the software. Are people engaging with the app? Are they seeing value in the features? And would that wearable enhance those features? And if so, how? And then we'd be comfortable to, hit that button on turning those 7 kind of, alpha units into full-scale production devices and taking those to market. So yeah, completely different ball game, hardware and software, and doing both in conjunction. It's been an interesting journey.
And are you also throwing in the coding in there as well? Are you doing the coding yourself, or have you outsourced that part at least?
I think you, especially with a startup, you need to really understand like where your strengths lie and where you're going to play. There's only myself and my co-founder Adam. He's from a sort of corporate finance background, so mergers, acquisitions, buy side, sell side, debt equity raising. So he really kind of focuses on the financials, the business modeling, making sure that any ideas I come up with essentially are viable from a business perspective, and keeping me in check when it comes to spend and things. And then, I've come from kind of more of a UX and innovation background. So I know that my kind of area of expertise is to go and speak to consumers and turn those into ideas, and then validate those ideas and turn them into concepts, and really run the product management side of things. And I don't think I could be doing my job as a product owner and product manager at the moment if I was kind of, in the depths of coding and developing. I think you need to know where your strengths lie, where your time should be spent, and where your focus should be, because you can't do everything. And there's nothing wrong with outsourcing, especially if you can find the right partnerships. There's nothing wrong with outsourcing if it's going to get you to your end goal quicker. And if you can find the right partners to kind of work with you, who are aligned with your goals, objectives, if they're pet owners themselves, for example, it really helps keep everyone aligned. So yeah, short answer, no, but for the right reasons, we've decided to, outsource where necessary, and do everything that we can in-house, and really focus our time and effort.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, that's I kind of love asking that question, because again, it just really shows to other startups out there that feel the pressure of doing everything themselves. Because I know, especially right now, there's a lot of discussions of no code and how great it is. But I always say that I see no code as a tool. Is one another tool, another resource that founders now have to move forward very quickly. Yet at the same time, it goes back to what you've said in terms of priorities. Where is my time? Where is it that I really need to play at, right? Of course, if you don't have the funding, whatever, is another thing. But it's about creating the right strategy that will work for you, so that you don't go too deep into the details of building and forget the higher level, which is actually attracting customers and building communities, pitching, and all of these other things that founders also have to do.
And it changes through the life cycle of the startup as well. Like in the early stages, I was doing everything. You can use kind of no-code platforms to get a website up and running and have a landing page that people come to. And, I was turning my kind of sketch files into something that was more of like a working prototype. And, I was doing bits of coding. I was doing everything I could. But you get to a point where, we were lucky enough to be successful with Innovate UK, and we brought on some really good investment. Our advisory board is super strong, and it gave us the opportunity to then kind of shift a little bit. So our focus changed to more, where did we want to be with the product? And we could outsource some of the development work. And, as you're getting closer to market, that development work needs to be consumer grade. The stuff I was developing in the early stage was not consumer grade. It was enough to get validation and get people kind of, understanding where we wanted to head with the product. And, I'm not going to pretend that I could, even get close to launching, developing and launching something of that level. So I think as you kind of go through that product life cycle, your focus shifts. You go from doing absolutely everything in the early stages to needing to know where your time and effort should be spent.
Yeah. Now, so if we shift our focus now more onto the product development that comes with a wearable device, wearable tech. So what were some of the biggest headaches that you are not prepared for, let's say? Because at the end of the day, with your product lead and product, you've been in product work for so long for really, really good companies and consultancies. So building the tech platform was Yes, come to the challenges, but at least there was a lot of known, But when it comes to wearable, it's kind of a bit of a new area as well where you're playing it at the moment. So what were some of the
Yeah.
things you thought, wow, I didn't really expect that?
There's been a lot. So I think the first one was like all my time at P&G, I'd say like 80% of that was building like internal products. So looking at, finance systems, HR systems, sales systems, and making those kind of fit for purpose for employees around the world within Procter & Gamble. And then kind of doing some external stuff. So, looking at how do we make, for example, shampoo and conditioner bottles inclusive to consumers that have got visual impairments, when one's got a black top, one's got a white top, and how do people know the difference if they can't see that? So I had that kind of small insight into that consumer side of things, but a lot of it had been internal. And then when I moved to Deloitte, obviously kind of more externally focused, but with bigger businesses, large FMCG companies. So I think the first difference for me was going into a startup where you're, very small. You've not got that kind of support network around you in terms of different functions, and actually, having to take something to market, fully yourself. So that was like the first challenge, and that would have been the same through hardware or software. I think the difference with the hardware is it was completely new to both of us. We both kind of had insight into the software world, more myself, but Adam as well. But from a hardware perspective and electronics and plastics and casing, like this was all new to us. So it was like a whole new world. So we really need to kind of do our research, but also rely on people that we're bringing in to support us. I think our general feel in the sort of hardware product development side of things is it's been really hard to find a partner to kind of join us on that journey. So the first thing was to really find someone that was aligned to our objectives and knew kind of what we were trying to achieve. Then it was like, who's got the right skill set? Initially it's looking at things like 3D printing and making that concept look and feel real for validation purposes. And that's a completely different skill set to someone that's going to take that into a full design that can be mass manufactured and scaled. And to be honest, I don't think we really appreciated and recognized those different skill sets, and that there were different agencies or different product development companies that would be doing those different pieces of work. I think we saw, product development agency, they'd be able to do the whole thing for us. This is going to be great. And we've got the investment now to go and do this. Whereas in reality, I think, you need to focus that early stage validation, requirement, concept development with a different skill set, different agency, different company, different partnership, than then taking that through to mass manufacture. So I think for us, it was navigating the different players in the space, understanding which partners could help us at different stages. And, we did waste time and money in the early stages, and it took us a while to find our feet. I'm talking a year and a half, 2 years ago. But then I think we really sort of found where we needed to go. We were accepted onto the Smart Things Accelerator program called Stack, based up in Glasgow. So it's basically an accelerator for IoT things and products. Within their ecosystem, there was a sort of product development agency, again, based up in Glasgow, down the road from my co-founder's house. And we really sort of found our feet. We were supported by the right people. We had the right mentors around us to help guide us and challenge us and ask us the right questions. But yeah, really, it was like, I think the first big kind of, challenge was finding the right people to come on that journey with us and support us from a sort of technical capability perspective. And then really from there, it's the capital and the time required to take a hardware product to market. You've got to try and be lean and agile and bootstrapped and do all those things at the early stages. But getting that from, as I said, now we've got 7 units out in the field that are being tested and validated, and we're getting all this sort of data and building the algorithms off the back of it. But taking that to market, you're talking sort of, massive bucks to get that to market. You're talking, 9 to 12 month lead times. You've got to get the components over from the Far East, set up a factory, set up the kind of tooling, build it here, do all the logistics. Compared to a software product, it's just a minefield. And I think, we've learned a lot along the way, and we're really well placed now that when we're ready to hit that button, I think we know everything we need to know now and we're ready to go. But it's been a huge learning curve over the last sort of 2 years or so.
Yeah, wow. It's actually incredible having to listen to that as you talked about so many different challenges that you faced. And in fact, one of the things that can definitely relate to just for myself and as well working about the startups is what you've mentioned about you try certain things and then you lose money in the process because you thought you were doing the right thing and realize that, whoa, something didn't go. But then the other things is also, I think the same happen in pretty much every field. When you start looking at this idea, for example, I'm a software engineer by trade, and now I work more into the leadership and the startups and help them with product management, project management, pretty much, where are you stuck? How can I help? And I jump in.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I spend a lot of time trying to explain to people, even just when it comes to software engineering, is why do you need a UX and product managers, for example? Why do you need a product manager and possibly a product owner? Why do you need different types of engineers? And it's really hard to, from the outside, to appreciate the nitty-gritty details of the different functions as you're talking about the product development, where you want to maybe 3D print certain things in a certain way, or you want to do some part of the journey. This is not, our company can only do this bit. And then you discover it along the way.
It's super important. I mean, like, think about it this way. Like, if you didn't have a UX lead or a product owner on a startup, on a project, whether it's in the corporate world, whether it's in the startup world, ultimately that person or those people provide the voice of the customer. Without that voice of the customer, you could have the best project manager in the world, and they'd make sure that the requirements that were kind of fed in initially were built correctly, on time, on cost, with quality, right? And that's great. But those requirements change over time, and you need to validate them at very different stages, across that journey. So you could have that best project manager in the world, and you'd end up with the perfect product, if you compared it against your original requirements. But without that voice of the customer, you don't know in a month's time, in 2 months' time, in 3 months' time, you don't have those validation points. You don't have that opportunity to pivot. You don't have those opportunities to create those wow moments with the product and make it fully fit for purpose. So, you would spend a lot more money, you would waste a lot more money, and you'd end up with a product that maybe wasn't as relevant or didn't have that stickiness factor compared to if you had that kind of UX or product lead. So I think, that voice of the customer is super important, and I think that's the main thing that kind of my skill set and people much more capable than me bring to projects, to startups, to businesses in general. Is that voice of the customer. I think it's super, super important and shouldn't be kind of, underestimated.
Yeah, I completely agree. And in fact, if there was a couple of things that you could share with founders out there that starts, but they don't really show on how to listen to customer, or at least use the skill set that you've mentioned. Just as an example, I started with a early stage non-technical founders, pretty much kind of like call me up and says, I've got an idea, I've got a team that I've outsourced that will do my development, but in between we just can't talk to each other, because his idea of his product was one single paper of A4 with the requirement in there. He gave it to me and I'm like, well, I need to start breaking it apart and do the research and everything before we can even get the engineers to even do anything, even just mock-ups. And one of the things that I realized very quickly is that the challenge of being a non-technical founder is being surrounded by application that looks amazing, right? But I don't appreciate what goes into something as simple as even just a logging screen. You can create a logging screen in so many different ways for different reasons. And charts, we were trying to work on certain charts that as part of this platform. And he was thinking about, we can have like 20 metrics. And my question was, why? It's good when I give information, like, but how are they going to use it? And I sat him through working through the process and deep questions and the research of just a few metrics. And it became obvious to him that there is no way that we have the time, the money, or even the knowledge of whether building all of those 20 metrics will land well once we build the app. So we kind of avoided doing that.
Exactly.
Of course, he had me on the team, and of course, your team also had the advantage of having you on the team. So for those who are starting up and they are kind of freestyling it on the way, bootstrapping before they can bring on product experts, is there any advice you can share with them to stop them from just going for the shiny things and focus on what's really important, especially when you talk about the voice of the customer.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, first of all, like, the good thing with user experience is that it's not like a super technical domain. So you can pick up techniques and tools, even if it's not your background. So, there are a huge amount of resources out there on the internet. I did my qualifications with Nielsen Norman Group, but there are a huge amount of free resources out there as well. So I guess first would be to just go out and kind of just make yourself familiar with kind of the user experience methodologies and practices and tools and techniques, because I think it's invaluable, and it's not the hardest thing to pick up. It's hard to master and it's hard to be really good at, but to just get off the ground is not hard. So yeah, firstly, go out and kind of look at free resources available and understand the tools and techniques that you should be adopting. I think the second thing is to not go into any conversation with a user with assumptions and leading questions. So it's to actually, even to put your product completely aside. Like in your example there, you maybe have a product idea on an A4 sheet of paper or a nice PowerPoint presentation, but put that out the window, forget about it for the 30 minutes that you're talking to that customer, and actually just interview them around, the topic or their day or their life, or this, like in our case, it was understanding, why they became a pet parent and their day-to-day pet parenting responsibilities, within the realms of the domain that you're trying to look at. Try and be as open as possible and understand that person's point of view and their kind of day-to-day activities and sort of pain points and motivations, rather than trying to always link it back to the product, because you're going to limit yourself. If you've got the product in the back of your mind, you're going to limit yourself and you're not going to come to the right conclusions. So I think that would be the second thing. And then as you start taking that forward, you're taking those insights that you've got from the user or users into, concepts and things that you need to validate. So then obviously the product needs to become a bit more front and center. You need to still ask them open questions, but you need to get to the point where you probably do need to put something in front of them to test it, or different variations of that to go and test and validate with them. So I think the techniques around that are, to not be leading with them, to not say, okay, I've got some ideas, like, what do you think? It's to still go back to those fundamental open questions and have that conversation with them. And towards the end of the conversation, bring in screenshots, mock-ups, wireframes, options, and start to link that back to what they've said. And to not lead them with, this is my favorite one, what do you think? But look, here are some options. Like, how would you use this? Or if I put this in front of you, like, what would you do? You might find that actually someone doesn't realize that screen goes into a whole flow that you've expected them to go into, and it'd be a non-starter. So yeah, I think that would be the third one. And then the fourth is, as you actually get into developing and building your product, you've got to be okay with the fact that things change and you'll need to pivot. So you can't be super precious about the product. You can't put it in front of people. Well, actually, firstly, you've got to be brave enough to put it in front of people, because it took us a while. We had this thing built and we were like, oh, no, it's not good enough to put out there. Maybe we just do another month of development, or maybe we just need to do some more this or that. But anyway, get it out there as soon as possible. And that's like a big breakthrough. But once you got it out there, don't be precious about it. You want people to tear it apart. You want people to tell you what they don't like. You want people to tell you what doesn't work, or what would make them engage with it even more, because ultimately that is your product roadmap. And if you've done this process right, you're getting those insights early enough that you've still got budget, you've still got time left to go and build those things before you launch your product fully. And what does launch even mean, right? I mean, it's not like a big bang, right? It's like we're already out on the App Store and Google Play, so you could argue that we're launched. But as far as I'm concerned, we've got a few hundred early adopters who are giving us loads of feedback, and this is really rich stuff that we can take forward. And we've got our eye on our launch in September time. But yeah, you've got to be willing to throw features away, change features, maybe take things away from where you'd initially thought they were going to go. So yeah, be willing to do all that. And then finally, although the voice of the customer is the most important, and ultimately that's what you should listen to, you've got to have some guiding principles, because otherwise you're just going to be told a million different things by a million different people, and you're never going to get to a product that works. So, guiding principles of what is your mission, what do you want to achieve, and what are your kind of key metrics to make sure that you're achieving that. In our case, as an example, it was we needed to look after the well-being of both the pet and the pet parent, and everything we do needed to lead into that. Our metrics are around acquisition and stickiness. So, how do we acquire customers and get them downloading the app and building that community? But then once they're in there, how do we keep them coming back in every single day? So I think, voice the customer, most important thing, and be adaptable and learn from them throughout the whole process. But have those kind of that North Star and those guiding kind of metrics and principles that allow you to stay true to your initial idea.
Wow, that was brilliant, Josh. I think you've unpacked quite a lot in terms of what startup founders can do out there, especially if they don't have the UX background, and it's incredible. And one of the things that I will highlight even much strongly than, as you've said, is don't get attached to your idea. Allow it to ebb and flow and evolve based on the feedback, but have your guiding principles. And I think that is really, really, really important. I see a lot of people who have an idea and they want to build that thing, and even when things is moving to another direction because of feedback or because of interest or maybe another area they never really realized, but they just see that, oh, it's my baby. I'm like, yes, but even a child, you can invest as much as you want in a child's education in terms of learning, making sure that they learn the piano. They want them to be the next Serena Williams, and 5 years later they don't want to pick up another racket. So exactly. You're gonna have to adapt to that. And I think thanks so much for sharing all of this wonderful advice.
Not at all. And when you're listening to them as well, it's like you've got to make sure that whatever you take forward, you've still got to be passionate about, because you've got to be motivated and passionate about the work that you're doing. So I think that's where that North Star or the guiding principles comes in, right? Because that's what keeps you going every day. And then there are going to be some ideas that users come up with which are incredible, but they just don't fit with the current strategy or that North Star. But don't throw them away. Have a sort of park it list of things that could be future features, an extension of your product, whatever, but never throw anything away either. And also, you don't need to take on every single piece of feedback and build that now. It can inform a future version of your business or whatever. So I think just being able to make those decisions is really important.
Yeah, definitely. So one thing I would also love to cover is growing a community. But before that, one quick reminder for those who are listening to us at the moment. At the end of every month, we run a free one-to-one mentoring sessions for startups. So if there's anything that Josh has mentioned here, you want to dive in deeper, I bring in a team of advisor, and we can just set you on your way and connect you with the right people to get your questions answered. So if you're interested, then please check our page online at innovate.com, and find me online and just ask me, and I'm sure I can give you the right information. But before we move on to the community, one question, Josh, I cannot leave the show without mentioning our shared passion when it comes not just to startups and products and all of that, but to CrossFit as well. You've mentioned that you had a CrossFit competition not so long ago. Are you moving on to other competition? Where are you on your CrossFit journey?
Yeah, so I did my first competition in January, and that was about 9 months into starting CrossFit, and it was really an opportunity for me to be like, okay, how am I? Where do I sit against other people, in the country, and what do I need to focus on in terms of my development? CrossFit covers gymnastics, cardio, weightlifting. So it's kind of a benchmark for me. Ended up getting on the podium, coming second in a really kind of advanced category. So I was super pleased with my performance. What I've decided though is to continue learning and developing. So I know that, for example, my cardio, my gymnastics is really good. My Olympic lifting, technique-wise, I've still got a lot to learn. So I'm focusing my training on that, and focusing on the Olympic lifting and trying to improve that side of things. But I also have a huge amount of hobbies. You know, I play golf, I cycle, both mountain bike and road biking. I ski, I play paddle, which is like paddle tennis. It's quite
Yes.
popular in Spain and South America. So I've kind of come to the conclusion that I want to enjoy all my different hobbies and not focus on like a single thing. So instead of aiming for, you know, a CrossFit competition in the next couple of months and training 6-7 times a week, I'm going to be training CrossFit 3 or 4 times a week, learning the things that I need to develop, and then do all my other hobbies and maybe look at a competition around the same time next year or something. I don't know, but still really enjoying it. You know, my social life around the sort of CrossFit box has been great. And yeah, really loving it. But as you know, it takes a lot of sort of commitment to really focus on it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'm exactly the same as you. I've way too many hobbies that surround around sport. And in fact, for me, sport is a way to help me with my mental health, and especially CrossFit, because I do it first time like about 7 in the morning or earlier, depends on the day. And I just go in there. It's my hour where I can shut out the world. If anything can be burning, but once I'm in there, especially if I didn't know it was there or if I knew, it's that hour where nothing matters than just me releasing and just being passionate. And in fact, I also, yeah, definitely. And in fact, I do a lot of tennis, and summer for me is more difficult because it gives me more opportunity for other sports like kayaking. Tennis is my favorite. I do boxing as well.
Nice.
And CrossFit is the one where I'm trying to stick in, at least for the last 2 years. I wanted to get better. But interestingly, I'm the opposite as you. As in, for me, I love the gymnastics and I'm learning gymnastics. My cardio is wow. It's great. Where it should be. So I love the strength part. When it comes to the world, I'm like, I just need to survive. And I have my new records on Monday for my deadlifts. Finally got 103 kilos deadlift.
Wow.
And about 71 back squats. So I'm like, okay.
Very nice. Yeah. It's finding those small wins, isn't it? You know, like having targets, breaking like kind of your new level. Yeah, what you said around that kind of break and stuff is so important. I mean, one thing around the competition was it was all consuming. Like I was really kind of stressed and nervous, and you know, I wanted to do well. Even though it was a kind of test to benchmark myself, I still really wanted to do well. So yeah, I think that's one thing that when you're trying to get a business off the ground, you just don't have the sort of capacity to do that. And I think that's another thing that's come into play. But on a day-to-day perspective, you know, as I've told you, I'm based out in Chile at the moment, South America. So there's 5 hours time difference to the UK. You know, it's 8:15 a.m. here. I've been already in meetings for like the last 3 hours. So it gets to like 1:15 here, 1 p.m. and kind of my meetings are finished, you know, from the UK at 6 p.m. in the UK by that point. So I use that as a time to go and do my CrossFit at 1:15 to 2:15. That's my CrossFit hour most days during the week. Gives me that break, gives me that peace of mind, gets all the stresses and things out. And actually the walk to and from CrossFit gives me kind of that time to solve problems and actually be the most creative like version of me in the day. And then I come back from CrossFit, have a really good lunch, and then no one else is online. The developers are not online. My co-founder's starting to kind of wind down for the day. Maybe we have a quick catch up. But then I've got the whole afternoon and evening just to like head down work, like and do like really sort of creative problem solving work. And yeah, I think it really is all surrounded by that kind of hour of exercise that kind of splits my day up and gives me that kind of reset.
Yeah, and this is an incredible example of what I talk about playground. Your day doesn't have to look the same for absolutely everybody. And of course, those watching is the reason why I brought the CrossFit is really to talk a little bit about looking after yourself. You might not be a CrossFit crazy fan like we are, but there is so many things that you can do and incorporate into your working day so that you have this time and also teach yourself to just release. Because I know it took me a while to learn how to be in the moment, but now it's, you know, whenever I'm not working, I'm doing something, I'm having a conversation with a friend, I forget whatever stress, because at the end of the day, right, when you run your business, there's always something. You could be closing a round of events now and everybody's congratulating you and just like this euphoria moment, but your brain is already thinking about the next 5 things.
Exactly.
You know? So if you don't train it to kind of allow you to really be connected, you know, right now I'm with you, Josh, I'm talking to you and I'm not thinking about, I was telling you, you know, tomorrow I have to do a workshop in Spanish for the first time. And I'm like, oh my God. But right now, I actually don't care because I'm talking to Josh.
I don't envy you with that, by the way. That is, yeah, hats off to you with that one.
Thank you.
But no, I think what you said about kind of everyone's day is different is super important because especially with, you know, how busy LinkedIn is nowadays and people kind of putting a version of themselves online. I think it's quite easy to fall into the trap of kind of comparing yourself to others and thinking, I'm not working hard enough. I'm not working enough hours. Like, why should I be going to CrossFit at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon? Like, who does that? But that's not the right way to live. I think, you know, for example, in my case, like I said, I have to get up really early in the morning and straight into back-to-back meetings for 6-7 hours. So by 1 p.m, I need that break. And it doesn't matter that it's 1 p.m. my time, it's 6 p.m. in the UK. So technically it is end of the day. Who cares? It's what's right for you. And, you know, as I said, the most productive and creative times can be when you're not actually at your desk. It's when you're walking to and from somewhere or when you're driving somewhere or whatever. But I mean, work isn't just sat at your laptop spending the hours bum on seat. It's, you know, it's actually solving problems, coming up with ideas, driving your business forward, and whatever it takes to get there is, and what's right for you is what's important. And that's not something that I kind of accepted straight away. I think I've probably struggled with you know, stresses and kind of, I guess, the mental health side of like feeling like I'm maybe not working hard enough or I'm not fitting into that kind of mold of what a typical founder would be. Even living in Chile and living in South America, you know, at first I hid that. I wasn't comfortable with sharing it with people because I thought people would think I'm off on this, you know, nice holiday. Well, no, I'm not. You know, I've got my apartment here. I've got my office. Like, I work just as I would anywhere else. It just so happens that I've got maybe more predictable weather than I had back in the UK, you know? So I think it's just getting comfortable with that and not allowing that to sort of impact your kind of working life, and, you know, find a good balance, find something that works for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yes, I can see how you're enjoying the best tropical fruits, but at the same time, you need to get Perro going and get the wearable tech out there for all of us to enjoy it.
Exactly.
So one final question, this one we're gonna take it very quickly as a very high level view of how can startups build a community to support whatever, you know, their product and things like that, because that's also something very difficult to do that you've managed to do really well over the years of building Perro.
Yeah, great question. A lot to unpack, but I'll give a sort of fairly succinct answer. I think understanding what building a community means is the first thing. So, you know, what does it mean for you, and why are you building it? So for us, we set out kind of a strategy from about March last year, where we maybe had a 3D print of the wearable, so the prototypes haven't been developed. The app was pretty much just wireframes. So we didn't actually have a product at that stage. It was more about validating the idea and building a community around the brand and the idea to validate that we were heading in the right direction. So it was awareness and validation, essentially, is what we're going after. So we started posting on social media about topics around, you know, our product or what we were trying to achieve, the mental well-being of pet owners and dogs, dog anxiety, that sort of thing. And we actually got loads of really engaged people saying, look, I really worry about how my mental health impacts my dog's mental health and how that impacts their training and behavior. And we got into all these really you know, interesting conversations with people that helped develop our product further. So it was really like understanding that at that stage, we shouldn't be measuring ourselves against conversion or downloads or anything else. It was just awareness and validation and building a community around that. And going broad, you know, trying all the different, we thought TikTok was going to be too young for dog owners because it was going to be full of kind of, you know, your Gen Z and stuff. But like, actually, that is where we've got about 15 of our 20,000 followers was through TikTok. So like, don't write stuff off, go broad, learn, listen to people. So that was kind of the first thing. And then it's like post that, building a community means something different. Building a community means signups and an email waiting list. And then after that, it's app downloads and pre-orders, and like your community changes. Now it's like going to be focused on how do we build an in-app community, not our social media and not our waiting list and our signups, which, we're really happy with where we got to. Now it's actually building a community in-app. So I think that community changes and what you want to achieve from it changes. And even what the community means in itself changes over the sort of life cycle. But I think to succinctly answer your question, it's understanding what community means and what you want to get from it at different stages through your product life cycle.
Wow, brilliant. Thank you so much for that. That was, again, I need to bring you back on my podcast at some point to even go deep into that. I love the way you
Absolutely.
can be very concise, but you just go straight deep, like bullseyes, in terms of giving people advice. And I love what you talked about. Actually, I didn't even think about that myself when I was planning this episode, the journey into what does it mean to build a community, but the journey into what the community needs as the product evolves and how you're going to serve them differently. So that is brilliant.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Josh, for being such a wonderful guest, and really enjoyed this conversation. And I'm sure that there's many founders out there that will get a lot of jewels from this as well. For anyone who wants to find out more about Perro, about you, where can they go?
Yes, head over to our website, myperro.co.uk. My email's on there. I'm also on LinkedIn. I am always more than happy to have a chat with people, whether it's directly related or not. I'm very much a people person. So yeah, just reach out either through the website, email, or LinkedIn.
And thank you. And for the rest of the audience, thanks again for following us on yet another episode. We've finally hit our 2 years mark of running the podcast. We're going from strength to strength. And yes, we are coming back again with many wonderful guests and speakers to continue. And of course, those who are interested in turning up for more support in terms of one-to-one mentoring sessions with our advisors, do let us know. In the meantime, let's design a happy and productive workplace playground together.